Hello everyone, this is a video I promised a while ago, and it serves as a follow-up to my earlier video about MSA, which I teased in the comments. As I've already mentioned, MSA has gotten pretty bad, so in this video I'll be analyzing and ranking some of their more recent uploads. Specifically, I'll be looking at selected MSA videos from 2024 to today, a period where I believe their decline has accelerated exponentially, and I'll be scoring them on a simple 0 to 10 scale. Just a few quick disclaimers: I won't be covering every single video, and everything you're about to hear is purely my personal opinion, so feel free to agree or disagree. You might also notice that I'm using a text-to-speech voice. I've been pretty sick while working on this video, likely with some kind of intestinal virus, and on top of that I've had a few real-life issues. Because of that, recording with my usual voice wasn't really an option. Alright, now let's begin. Why not start the rankings with something straightforward, like the latest video at the time of this video being made? This one follows a sheltered, overly chatty, and largely oblivious teenager named Ariana, who discovers that her mother is actually a fraud trying to steal her inheritance, leading to a dramatic confrontation where Paula and Leo step in to save her from a sinister plot involving her comatose father. While Paula may come off as a bit posh, she's often the only one making any sense, whereas Ariana's instant and unwavering trust in her mother is frustratingly immature, especially once her mother inevitably turns on her and reveals herself as a painfully generic, over-the-top rich villain. The story takes far too long to get where it's going, with many scenes feeling like unnecessary filler that drags the pacing down, and the ending doesn't really resolve anything, settling instead for a bland romantic hug with Leo. I wanted to see more regarding Ariana's father, whose condition remains unresolved and awkwardly left hanging. In the end, the video isn't terrible, but it feels mean-spirited, messy, and unfocused, earning a 4 out of 10. There is one major flaw with this video: its pacing. I mean, think about it, in just 10 minutes and 54 seconds, it crams years of childhood neglect, a move to boarding school, the shocking discovery of a twin sister, a whirlwind romance, and a kidnapping plot that's resolved almost instantly. The title is, furthermore, almost irrelevant. The mom only cuts the main character Chris's hair in one brief scene. Speaking of which, Chris is understandably irritated, thrown off by Melody's sudden appearance, especially given a mom more focused on fame than care. Yet the plot rushes along, she meets a guy, and suddenly the writers decide he is the villain. The result is a story that feels both fast and shallow, leaving little room for emotional depth or suspense, and thus this is another 4 out of 10. This video started off promising but quickly took a nosedive into a mean-spirited, dumb, and blatant advertisement. It follows Jules, a rich girl, who befriends Amanda, a hardworking scholarship student. Amanda's story initially seemed engaging, but after finding a home with a wealthy family, her character shifts into an unsettling, villainous, classist socialite, which feels forced and unnatural. What's most disheartening is that the video ultimately serves as little more than a plug for their miniseries The Con Sisters. Heck, even the ending has Amanda traveling to Bora Bora because she was inspired by the series itself. This blatant self-promotion completely hijacks the vibe of the video, and it feels especially insulting because it followed another video promoting AFK Journey just 7 days prior, giving the impression of being bombarded by back-to-back promotions. 2.5 out of 10, just frustrating. So, the plot follows an actor named Leon and his romantic journey with a girl named Reese, but it's a painfully obvious rehash of No One Has Seen My Real Face. Leon hides his identity by wearing a black wig, glasses, and a hoodie, even changing his name to Noel, basically Iris to Siri all over again. The story tries to set itself apart, but ends up as a stale rehash. Some moments are absurdly predictable, but what I found utterly off-putting was the presence of multiple fart jokes sprinkled throughout. They're not clever, but rather just obnoxious, and I cannot overstate how much they drag the whole thing down. Then there's the ending, a kiss abruptly revealed as a dream by Iris, which, while shocking, feels like a massive middle finger. I'm torn on how to feel about it. Overall, it's a generic, mostly inoffensive effort that earns a 3 out of 10, lacking originality and memorable moments. The video had potential, centering on a photographer whose work is stolen, and some moments were genuinely heartwarming, but it's ultimately ruined by several glaring issues. The dialogue is often melodramatic to the point of being unbearable, and the story simply can't decide whether it wants to be serious, suspenseful, or comical. The ending neatly resolves all conflicts, which is satisfying in theory, but Fiona's motivation, that she wants her father to look at me the way he looks at his stupid golf trophies, is absurdly exaggerated and undermines the plot's credibility. The absolute worst part, however, is a scene that completely breaks tension to deliver a shameless plug, like and subscribe to MSA or I steal your work, a line so infuriating that I had to pause the video just to calm down. The video is something that could have resonated, especially for people like me who are interested to some extent in photography, is instead buried under clueless storytelling, self-indulgence, and tonal confusion, and as such I can only give this video a disappointing 2.5 out of 10.
Oh!
Okay, I did not enjoy this video at all. It's blatant clickbait, painfully cringeworthy, and drowning in ads, starting with the completely misleading title I was abducted by a prince. Sure, there's a prince in the story, but not once does he actually abduct Danielle, the main character. Instead, the story is about Danielle and her strained relationship with her mom, whose post-divorce job as a singing telegram is so unbearably awkward that the final singing scene genuinely forced me to pause the video to recover. The storytelling is lazy and insulting, relying on a random prince to justify the title, a generic unnamed main character, and a main character who experiences zero meaningful growth or resolution. All while constantly interrupting everything with invasive, obnoxious ads, especially the forced MSA merch shilling with bottles and notebooks at 60% off, which I could not care less about. Of course this video gets a 1 out of 10. Maybe with less advertising and with a different, honest title like I was ashamed of my mom's weird job, this video could comfortably sit into 2 out of 10 territory, but the sheer amount of clickbait and ad overload drags it straight back down. Honestly, this MSA video stood out to me, but not exactly for the reasons you'd expect, because it follows a 16-year-old star ballerina from New York dealing with fame, and from there it dives into a very familiar love triangle with Isaac and Luca. Isaac starts off as the romantic interest but quickly turns into the antagonist, while Luca redeems himself after some sketchy behavior and ends up with the ballerina. What really caught my attention, though, is the fact that the story is told entirely in first person, with the narrator directly addressing you as if you are the ballerina, which is something MSA basically never does. I'll give them credit for trying something new, because the idea is bold and clearly meant to be immersive. But for me it just didn't fully click since the actual plot is still a super predictable love triangle we've seen a million times before. The execution itself is clean and there's nothing painfully annoying about it, but the originality of the format and the cliché storyline kind of cancel each other out, so in the end I'll give this a 5 out of 10. Despite how much I've dunked on MSA this video, not everything is bad. Let's start with this video. It is about Iris, one of musically gifted triplets from Atlanta, raised mostly by their devoted mother while their father was often absent for work, until tragedy struck. Their mother's stroke and their father's subsequent job loss and depression put enormous emotional and financial strain on the family, even as the triplets tried to stay optimistic. Things start to fracture when Ileana leaves the band and Kat replaces her. In response, Iris begins acting out in ways that make her unlikable. Some of her pranks feel straight up mean, especially when she fakes an acceptance letter just to mess with Ileana. Which is straight up petty and cruel. Ileana just wants her nerdy piece, while Kat emerges as the clear voice of reason. Thankfully, the ending lands well. Iris reflects, apologizes, and accepts that different paths are valid. Iris is not truly the worst, but that complexity makes the story interesting. Overall, it's heavy but solid, earning a 6.75 out of 10. Not bad, really. This video is frankly terrible, built around a disjointed, cliched story that never comes together, with comedy that feels more like lazy filler than anything meaningful. Jokes like the vending machine incident or the nephew peeing on the couch don't advance the plot at all and exist purely to pad the runtime, making the whole thing feel bloated and pointless. The main character is deeply unlikable, blunt, painfully stupid, and seemingly devoid of basic common sense, while many scenes feel copy-pasted with no real cohesion. In the end, it comes off as a generic royalty-themed story drowned in childish, brainless humor that only iPad kids would find funny, leaving the entire experience dumb, pathetic, and exhausting. At best, it deserves a 1.5 out of 10, and even that feels generous. What makes this MSA video so frustrating is that it almost had something meaningful to say before spectacularly sabotaging itself. It's about Isabel and her insecurity about her height and her feelings of inadequacy as an adopted child, which has real emotional weight and the potential to resonate. Instead of developing this core conflict, however, the narrative spirals into a mess of irrelevant, increasingly absurd subplots that completely smother what little focus it had. The worst offender is Riri, an unbearably exaggerated diva with zero nuance who hijacks the story so thoroughly that Isabel's struggle, supposedly the entire point of the video, becomes an afterthought. By the halfway mark, the plot has unraveled into pure noise, pointless filler like the absurd nurse scene, the dragged-out Alan/Nathan subplot, and the laughable reveal that Daphne's father was bribed $50,000 to claim paternity, which feels less like drama and more like accidental parody. Then the ending just gives up entirely, dumping a last-second reveal that Riri hid Aunt Judith on an island with amnesia out of spite and cutting to black without consequences, logic, or closure. Isabel remains the only remotely sympathetic element, but even she can't save a story so incoherent and insulting that the lowest I can give this video is a 2 out of 10. The video is fast-paced and all over the place, but in a uniquely effective way that ends up working in its favor. It follows Julie, a computer prodigy who creates an AI clone of herself to take on the emotional labor of supporting her insecure older sister, a surprisingly grounded and human arc, before spiraling into the creation of multiple other bots that inevitably go rogue. As a modern spin on the classic AI gone rogue trope, it feels especially timely given current tech trends, and it lands a clear, positive moral about the importance of face-to-face honesty over relying on digital shortcuts. The chaotic energy isn't just noise, it actively mirrors the feeling of a digital system spinning out of control. That said, the sheer number of subplots makes the final act feel a bit cluttered and unfocused, but the concept is strong enough that it still comes together, and I guess the final score is 7 out of 10. I'm also covering a miniseries in this video, and honestly, I hated this one with my own eyes. It's bloated with filler and stuffed with painfully unfunny, grating comedy that drags the whole two-parter into the mud, but this episode in particular was so bad it genuinely pissed me off. Part 1 pretends to have a plot for a few seconds before completely imploding into a chaotic mess. None of it flows, none of it feels earned, and Alice, the main character, is one of the most obnoxious characters I have ever seen. The absolute breaking point comes around the 30-minute mark, when the story finally builds a hint of suspense where Alice and her friend's life is at stake, only for Alice to smash the tension by smugly telling the audience to watch part 4. Cackling "just kidding," and then a twist which was completely stupid, at which point I had to pause the video out of pure frustration. This 40-minute slog is easily one of the most filler-heavy episodes MSA has ever made, crammed with random pop culture references like Sandra Bullock, Billie Eilish, The Kardashians, and Pirates of the Caribbean, stretched to hell with no real direction, and once Alice smirked and teased part 4, it became crystal clear part 1 deserved a straight 1 out of 10. Part 2 of the miniseries immediately pulls a bait-and-switch by teasing a new story from a girl in Paris, only to yell psych and shove Alice back into the spotlight to annoy the hell out of me all over again, as she barely starts her tale before derailing it into rambling about her mom and some mob gang. Things only get worse when Alice's mom starts praising her dad's looks, prompting Alice to awkwardly remind her they're on a family channel, before abruptly changing the subject to her hunger and grabbing hot dogs, followed by a bizarrely censored scene with an MSA disclaimer claiming it was too disgusting to show, strongly implying a crude sexual joke. Yeah, talk about family-friendly. This is straight up laughable. Beyond that mess, the episode drags on for nearly 30 minutes with a tangled, directionless plot bloated by forced jokes, random pop culture references, and Alice continuing to chatter endlessly. Additionally, the so-called romance involving Alice somehow hinges on horoscopes, which is so damn idiotic. Moreover, while Part 2 is technically shorter than Part 1, it's no improvement, just another incoherent slog overloaded with grating humor, tonal whiplash, and edgy content, earning it yet another well-deserved 1 out of 10 and cementing this miniseries as a race to the bottom that it's winning effortlessly. Watching this video felt like enduring a chaotic mess that mistakes shock value for substance, and it honestly drove me up the wall. It can't decide what it wants to be, lurching awkwardly from a supposedly light-hearted rom-com about an obsessed fan into a ridiculous crime thriller with international smuggling and kidnapping, with zero narrative glue holding it together. Huge chunks of it are pure filler, especially the painfully annoying scene where the main character, who is a complete dumbass, plain and simple, gets drugged, dragging the runtime and my patience down with it. The story is incoherent to the point of being exhausting, and it doesn't help that the MC vandalizes a business and traumatizes a child over something as stupid as seeing a cardboard cutout of her ex. By the end, I wasn't shocked or entertained, just irritated. This dump earns a solid 2 out of 10. This video is an absolute disaster from start to finish, and I don't even know where to begin with how infuriating it is. It follows Gabby Lee, supposedly a brilliant aspiring chemist, but somehow the moment she decides to go to a Millie Cancun concert with her friends, everything devolves into a mind-numbing mess. They steal her dad's car, run into some pointless random guy whose scenes contribute nothing, and Gabby, despite supposedly being smart, acts like a complete imbecile. The absolute low point is the police scene, where she cries like a toddler, confessing to crashing a car, begging to be arrested, and insisting on paying for the damages. I nearly threw my device at the wall. And the ending? Honestly, what the fuck even was it? I wanted to give it 0.75 just for how rage-inducing it was, but even that felt too generous. This mess deserves a solid 1 out of 10, max. To close off this saga of reviews on a high note, this video genuinely stands out. It tells the story of Sierra, a young girl who struggles with a stutter and relentless bullying from her neighbor Kelsey, who sabotages her at every turn. Despite the emotional manipulation and adversity, Sierra refuses to be defined by her stutter or Kelsey's cruelty, ultimately choosing her own happiness over toxic relationships. Kelsey, driven by resentment stemming from a family affair that ruined her own life, is hyperbolic and naturally unlikable but gets her comeuppance after a violent outburst, resulting in her arrest, while Sierra finds a father figure in Mr. Dean, Kelsey's father. The video is executed nearly flawlessly, the concept is strong. The story meaningful, and there's virtually no filler, with the antagonist actually facing consequences. The only minor drawback is the music, which is sometimes jarring and poorly timed during suspenseful moments, slightly dragging the pacing. Overall, this is a genuinely great video, earning an 8.5 out of 10. I am genuinely impressed. This is just like Isabel's story, but done right. Well, that was quite the ride, wasn't it? After slogging through this dumpster fire of misguided plots, cringe-worthy comedy, endless ads, and the occasional fleeting glimpse of something halfway decent, it's clear that MSA's creative compass has a permanent case of motion sickness. The highs are brief, the lows catastrophic, and the so-called experiments about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Yet, every once in a while, a video breaks through the chaos, hinting that beneath all the clickbait, self-promotion, and chaotic editing, there's a story that could have mattered. Still, the channel has clearly fallen off, and this video, and its ratings, only confirms it. Thanks for watching, and see you on the flip side.